This episode of Co-op is brought to you by GoDaddy.com, Gamefly, and Squarespace.
Kind of excited.
Yeah.
10 years ago on this day, 9/9/99, a really amazing product became available on the marketplace that I loved a lot personally, and it was Final Fantasy VIII for the Sony PlayStation 1.
No! Wait a second.
No, this is the anniversary of the Dreamcast.
They came out on the same day.
It was.
When I got my Dreamcast, I think I was 10 or 11.
I never owned a Dreamcast because I guess I just sucked. I sucked, okay?
I was not in kindergarten when Dreamcast came out though. I was in college like everybody else who was awesome.
I remember when it came out, I bought 6 games with it at launch, and they were all fantastic.
For Dreamcast, there were so many great games.
I played a lot of Dreamcast. I think it might be one of my favorite consoles in the whole gaming era so far.
And then we all basically killed each other every day to play Dreamcast.
The Dreamcast is a cream blast.
The thing I like about you most is you'd run away with me. So pack your bags and your shotgun too. We might run into zombies. We're always down for that co-op multiplayer action. We're always down. We're so down. We're so down. We're so down for co-op. We're so down for that co-op action.
And I remember going to the arcade in the Hicksville, New York, Long Island, and getting my ass whooped in Marvel vs. Capcom. And I said, I'm gonna get better at this game. So I bought it for PlayStation. I was playing PlayStation every single day, and I was like, I got good at this game. And then I go over to these circle of 8 people who played Marvel vs. Capcom seriously, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I remember them handing me a Dreamcast controller. And I'm like, what is this bastard controller that you're trying to make me play?
The funny thing is, even after the Xbox One fat controller, like going back to this, it still feels like the most waffle-ish controller, you know? You're holding like this huge fucking disc.
I thought it looked good when I first saw the promo shots, the first shots of the Dreamcast when it was announced, and they just kind of showed the front of the controllers. I thought they looked really cool. My biggest problem, honestly, is the triggers and how thin this was, the base to hold on to, and how low the triggers were.
Yeah, the triggers are obviously too low. I think that's a big problem. When I would squeeze down on the triggers, they'd somehow hit this like spot on my finger where it's like it was hitting a nerve basically, and so it got really painful when I was playing certain games that I was mashing or like really relying on the triggers.
Yep.
The PlayStation 1 dual analog controller, and I think even the DualShock had come out by the time the Dreamcast controller was released. It's only 6 buttons total on the controller, really gameplay buttons anyway, versus 8 on a PlayStation controller.
Right.
So you just had a few less options. And the D-pad, it's not that responsive.
No.
The analog stick has the little like nubs on it that, again, kind of hurt my fingers after hours and hours of play.
Kind of like sandpaper.
I had been asking my parents for it for a while, and they finally, they brought it home one day with a copy of Sonic Adventure. So I'm super excited, and they're like, well, we didn't get you a VMU because they're $40, and we're not getting you one right now. So this was at the point where, I was young enough that my parents decided my game playing time. So their system was I had to do chores to get hour tokens. So I had to save up about 22 or 24 hour tokens doing chores, And then I sat down on a Saturday and played Sonic Adventure through for like 20-something hours without saving. That was good times.
VMU is an interesting case because, like, you look at this thing, and even now, I mean, this thing looks awesome. The cap that came on them, you can connect them together to, like, make, you know,
you can fight against each other.
VMU sex possibilities.
It looks like a little Game Boy.
It looked like you'd really be able to, like, take components of games with you, do something, and then bring it back to your home system and have it change the console experience.
Yeah, loads of potential.
And they basically didn't do much with it at all.
Like when you play Soul Calibur and you pick your character and you got like the little lizard man there or a little Sophie.
Well, I mean, that's the same with any game.
You know,
like Jet Grind Radio has a Jet Grind Radio logo. Or
the main thing though is that all this production, D-pads, buttons, a sleep button, mode button, I never touched anything these things, and the screen increased the price of the VMUs. They were much more expensive than they would have been if they had just been memory cards.
Yeah.
I like the idea of them because they look so cool, but God, it would have been nice to have just had fewer and cheaper peripherals. And with them not in the controller, think of how much smaller and more compact they could have made it. Imagine if it had been more like a Saturn pad rather than a Dreamcast pad. And my biggest complaint is how it affected the controller. And I really think that the controller would have been better if it didn't have to house two giant memory cards in it.
I agree.
You know, the industrial design of this system is really nice. And a lot of firsts on this system too. It was the first time that we got you know, of online games really on a console.
Yeah. Was it the first one to do an Ethernet jack built into the system? Like you didn't have to buy anything extra?
No, they're not Ethernet. It had a modem.
It had a modem. Out of the box to dial in and play
Right.
Phantasy Star Online, which was amazing. You know, I was using 56K in '99, so I took advantage of it.
This Dreamcast came out when I was in college, and like a lot of people that are my age, my first really good internet connection was when I got to college. And so I was one of the lucky ones that got a broadband adapter for the back of my system. When I would play online, they would comment to me that if I started the game, that the connection was just like less laggy the entire time. So it was cool that I was able to positively benefit, you know, the other people playing the game as well. Dreamcast had a shit ton of peripherals. There's guns, there's keyboards, there's joysticks.
I wish we had the maracas so we could play someday.
A friend of mine and I were completely addicted to Samba de Amigo, and we got stuck. We got to a point where we could not pass. So what we did is we put a cassette in his VCR and we recorded the song as we were losing. Then we played it back in slow motion and made diagrams of where the circles went. Then we memorized the patterns and went back and played it, and we cleared it.
Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, que tu cuerpo es para darle alegría, cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo alegría Macarena, Macarena.
The accessories for Dreamcast that I love more than anything else, and which has really like makes this system such a nice one to go back to, is the VGA box. This box allows you to plug your Dreamcast in to a VGA monitor. Just amazing that it played in 640 by 480, but like the visuals were so crisp and clean. I mean, it doesn't seem like that much of a difference in terms of resolution, but like somehow that cable, that connector just brought out the best in the visuals.
It's the first thing we've said. Every game that we've popped in, we've been like, wow, it still looks really good.
I remember when I used to play Phantasy Star Online, I would use my VGA box and everything looked great. I could type. And one time I plugged it in to my TV using S-Video because I was away from home or something like that, and all the text instantly was like muddied and like dirty, and it was hard to read. I was like, oh man, I'm so spoiled getting to play this on a VGA monitor all the time. And I remember really being angry when PS2 came out and Xbox came out and they didn't have VGA connection. If you want to make an impact online, GoDaddy.com has what you need. .com names as low as $1.99, plus world-class hosting, fast and easy website builders, and much more. Plus, enter code CO6 when you check out and save an additional 20% off of a 1-, 2-, or 3-year hosting plan. Some restrictions apply. See site for details and get your piece of the internet at GoDaddy.com.
I didn't actually own a Dreamcast until I got one when they were $15 used at Blockbuster. because I was a super hardcore Nintendo fanboy back then who thought that Sega was the enemy, and I learned how wrong I was, because the Dreamcast is awesome, and I regretted all those years of not owning one, because Soul Calibur is the most awesome game ever. Dreamcast had a lot of really good games that I missed out on at the time, and I have not made that mistake since.
Yeah.
I'm not a platform fanboy anymore, and I thank the Dreamcast for that.
I was lucky enough to go to the E3 in '99. That was my first E3, which was where they were showing off Dreamcast for the first time, and they had just a ton of games. It was a lot of games. Huge launch. Yeah. That was the first time I played Soul Calibur. They had a demo there that had like 4 of the characters. One of them was Keelik, who eventually became like my go-to character in every Soul Calibur game. And seeing that running in motion for the first time was just like incredible. And still, when you put it in now, yeah, like it looks a little dated, but I mean, you can still see how you would think that back when it first came out.
Oh yeah, if you think about it, at that time, the only other games competing in that space were like Tekken and Virtua Fighter. As soon as Soul Calibur came out, those games automatically felt dated and stiff. Soul Calibur, you know, you were hitting a few button presses and you were seeing a flashy special move, you know, and that was something that I hadn't seen since like Street Fighter or something like that.
I mean, just the ability that your character can move like, you know, 8 ways all around you.
8-way run was a revelation.
Was just like amazing, you know. And I didn't have a Dreamcast. I used to always go over to my friend Nate White's house every day after school or on the weekend. I would be there playing Soul Calibur or 2K Tennis. It was
did you guys play on the joypads, or did you guys play
he had a joystick. It was like this, but there was 2 of them and they were like connected together. So it had to be like,
you had to get all close together.
It was like this like bromance moment, you know, or just like,
I'm gonna kick your ass.
But,
I'm gonna kick your ass.
There was so much like shit talking. It was just like once we unlocked all the characters, like Lizard Man was my character, and he hated Lizard Man. It was like one of those things where I'd knock him down, get up, I'd throw him.
There's so many moves for each character, so many characters, and a lot of depth there for hardcore gamers.
Weapons.
I mean, the weapons, then the GI system, and all that stuff. But because of the nature of the gameplay system, you can kind of mash buttons in the game, have flashy moves come out on screen, and because of the way the systems work, you can beat players that are actually pretty good at the game. Like you probably couldn't beat like a tournament level player, but dudes like me who are just trying to learn all the moves and play like a very specific way, I would get destroyed by people that came in and mashed buttons. It was like a casual game, even though it wasn't.
It was.
Like when we were sitting around playing it, like our girlfriends and friends would like sit around and see the stuff happening on a screen, and they'd want to get in on the action. So even though it was a fighting game, it was still attracting like this whole crowd of people that weren't really gamers, and I thought that was a really incredible thing about this game.
I was working at GameStop right when Babbage's is what our store was at the time. And the only demo unit we had in our store was a Dreamcast one, and that's what we had in there was Soul Calibur. I was playing Soul Calibur all the time because we were in a pretty slow store, and we had a really small arcade in the mall as well that had a lot of fighting games that kids would play. And once people started checking out Soul Calibur at our store and stopping by, all these arcade kids started hanging out. We would be trying to close our store, we would just be trying to like do whatever, and you had 6 kids yelling and screaming in front of your store, like playing the game and swearing, and that was one of my favorite things to do, is just kind of like reach under the counter, just unplug it.
You were that guy.
Yeah,
you were that
always
guy.
used to say, I'm like,
it's on a timer, guys.
Yeah,
it goes on.
Hey, you know what? That's how it was, and you know what? I always saw the Soul Calibur and the Virtual Tennis units up there, and you know what? I have to say, those are 2 of the best games they could have displayed, because Virtual Tennis was so good. I mean, it was the quintessential like arcade tennis game.
it's not the deepest game ever or anything, but it still holds up in so much as like we sat down today and we played the hell out of it. It was a ton of fun to get back into it.
Game.
Yeah, and the computer is ruthlessly difficult.
It's so hard.
Which makes it kind of, it makes me play a little bit more than maybe I would. Like if the computer was super easy, I would probably play a few matches and be like, this is boring. But the fact that there's not that much depth to the controls, it's mostly about timing and getting yourself in the right position before you press the button and this sort of thing. You're like, dude, I can't be this bad. Like I've got to be able to beat this stupid AI, and they just like smash. They like wipe the floor with us. Obviously, this is not universally true, but Dreamcast games are like kind of these vibrant, colorful, you know, happy games. Like they're happy places to go to. Now we have, it's more, you know, popular to do like combat games like Gears of War, that sort of thing. But the big games on Dreamcast are all these like super bright, shiny, colorful games, like everything from Jet Set Radio
Skies
or
Arcadia,
Shenmue or
Phantasy Star Online,
even Soul Calibur, Marvel vs. Capcom, Tennis. Like all the games are just kind of like bright
Crazy
and
Taxi,
light,
like really,
Crazy Taxi, you know
really
what I mean?
vibrant, yeah.
And it was just like a fun, happy time to be a gamer.
There was one game that was kind of a little dark and dreary, and that was House of the Dead.
I don't know, even that still feels like kind of like something bright and weird. Like,
well, I think that has more to do with the dialogue.
James, I tried. Don't underestimate the enemy. James, take this.
It doesn't feel like scary, you know, it's silly. It's like a B movie.
Yeah.
And that's part of what's fun about playing that game. And unfortunately, House of the Dead is one of the games that doesn't hold up too well now because this light gun doesn't work with my television.
Yeah, it's a CRT based technology.
I know it wasn't necessarily originally a Dreamcast game, but I spent hours and hours and hours of my life playing Typing of the Dead with the keyboard peripheral. At the time, I had just graduated from college. I didn't have a computer, but my roommate had internet access. So the fact that the Dreamcast had the little internet access, I bought the keyboard and I bought Typing of the Dead. So I had this computer and I had this game, and it was so cool.
It's House of the Dead meets Mavis Beacon.
Oh yeah.
I wish they had this in my school. I would have. I would have loved to learn to type using this game. Yeah. It's so quirky. It's such a weird combination. Like I would have never thought of it. What genius was like, man, I wish that I was playing this light gun game with a keyboard instead. Like let's put a bunch of funny words, and they are funny. I mean, the words that come up on screen are just hilarious, and sometimes they make little phrases when you combine some of them together, or they're sort of like themed the same way. And everything down to like just hitting the single letters to kill the tiniest of tiny enemies.
Little bat.
It's made by SmileBit, and SmileBit was just like a really great first-party development team within Sega, doing a bunch of great games at the time. And obviously, I think they're most well known for Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio.
I stayed up all night, you know, battling all the different gangs, unlocking all the characters, and finally, like, beating the shit out of that giant teddy bear DJ final boss. I mean, it was a different experience, and one that definitely defined the Dreamcast for me, you know? I mean, it's an experience you couldn't find anywhere else.
At the time, it was probably the most stylish game to come to exist.
Oh, yeah. You know, you've never seen anything like it before.
The only thing that I can think that would even come close would be like the Wipeout series, Wipeout XL or Wipeout 3. were at least equally stylish, but you know, one kind of represented this futuristic, you know, fictional UK, and the other one did the same for Tokyo.
Yep.
And the other thing is that though the gameplay is rad in this game, and I do like it better than the gameplay even in Jet Set Radio Future, which is the follow-up that came out on Xbox, I think the gameplay is better in this game, personally. I like the tagging with the Street Fighter moves that you do.
Hey! Yeah, yeah,
It does feel a little bit kind of unpolished. I mean, there's a little bit of a sort of delay when you press the buttons, and you know, it does take a little getting used to. It's not very user friendly. I think
the jumping too is a little floaty, it seems.
Yeah,
and it takes a long time to build momentum, so you find yourself missing jumps a lot.
Or overshooting them too.
Starting over a lot. I think they did tweak that a bit for future. I think it was a more user friendly game, but still, beyond all that, for a game that you end up replaying sections of over and over and over because, you know, the mechanics are a little sloppy. God, there's big payoff in this game. And I think part of it is if the soundtrack wasn't like the best goddamn soundtrack in the history of Earth.
The soundtrack is so good. The lobby music alone, like I start humming for the longest time.
I'm Joel from Canada. Word up, Rebel FM. Woo! And what I remember the most about the Dreamcast is how I started off like so crazy excited for it, and then the launch came, and in Canada, at least in my town, the launch was really bad. So I ended up almost not liking my console anymore. Like the store I bought it, all you could get was like flag to flag racing. Yeah, seriously, I was at Toys R Us. They're like, oh, here's your game. You're like, no thanks. Not so much. And what really turned it around for me is I got Crazy Taxi eventually. It took a long time to be able to buy it locally. And my roommate and I started going back and forth on it constantly. So like, I'd get a score, he'd try to beat it. We played it so much for hours on end that my now wife, who was going through exams for computer programming, started to hate Offspring. And she'd just hear the song from like the other room and she'd just be like, oh my God, guys, seriously, can you at least turn the sound off? And that really put the system back into my heart, and eventually everyone knew me as like the Dreamcast guy.
I would pump quarters, so many quarters into that game, you know, in the arcades, and to be able to play it at home, you know, it was like the Street Fighter coming home again. You know?
It's such a simple sort of setup in the main arcade mode of the game, where you pop some quarters in, you pick a driver, and then you're popped into a pretty giant open world, and you just kind of have to sort out that what you need to do is pick up passengers and take them where they want to go.
Right.
The mechanics are simple and effective.
Yeah.
But there's a hidden layer of depth. I don't remember how I first found out about it, but there's all these like special moves where you like click between forward and reverse and forward, and then hit the dash at the exact time, and you get like a speed boost.
Yep.
You're always getting a turbo boost basically, and at that point, it feels so deep. Like there's so much like good mechanics in there that I just really love the game. And I think it's important to mention that the Crazy Box mode, or the Crazy Pyramid mode,
I forgot about
Crazy Taxi 2 was just a really fun way to like get more out of a game that was pretty straightforward and simple. Although Crazy Taxi 1 and 2 are a little too similar, probably in retrospect, and the environment in Crazy Taxi 1 is kind of better than the Big Apple in Crazy Taxi 2. At least they added multiple fares in Crazy Taxi 2. That was kind of cool.
That's true. And I'm always surprised by the legs that game still has. I mean, I can still pop it in and get, you know, a good hour's worth of fun out of it.
Didn't expect to get here so fast.
What's wrong, Billy? No money for new games? Well, try GameFly. GameFly is the largest online video game rental service and offers you a choice from over 6,000 new and classic titles across all consoles and handhelds. With plans starting at $15.95 a month, GameFly members can rent 1 to 4 games at a time and keep them for as long as they like. There are no late fees, no due dates, and shipping is always free. Once you're done playing a game, send it back and GameFly will send you the next available game on your list. If you really like the game you're playing, simply click Keep It on the GameFly website and the game is yours, at a discounted price. GameFly will even mail you the case and manuals free of charge. Co-op fans will get a 2-week free trial when they go to gamefly.com/co-op. Some restrictions apply, see site for details.
The Dreamcast is kind of a haven for creativity and original content, and Skies of Arcadia was kind of the opposite of that. It was really sort of the contrary to what you'd expect from Dreamcast. It was a very predictable, solid, classic RPG, but that's why it was so good. The creators really stopped and said, what made these old RPGs so great? And it wasn't, you know, the graphics, obviously, it wasn't convoluted battle systems, it was just solid gameplay, really great characters, a really simple but compelling story, and at the time it was such a beautiful game and just so good-natured. So much the opposite of all the surly, pretty boy anti-heroes that had come before. The hero had no personal issues. He was like, I'm a sky pirate, but I'm a good sky pirate, so I'm gonna go be a good pirate and do good things in the sky, like a pirate. And that was as complicated as it got. So, you know, in a way, now that I stop and think about it, I do think that Skies of Arcadia did have sort of that innate Dreamcast quality to it, because the Dreamcast really was about just good games, feeling good about playing something fun. There's not enough of that anymore.
Father! Why?
The Shenmue series was a wonderful reason to own the Dreamcast. I loved the ambition of the title, even though it had incredible number of faults. You know, it was basically trying too hard, doing too much for the time period. The scope was far too ambitious. They were planning to do 16 chapters. The first game was 1 chapter as far as I can remember. Shenmue 2 is chapters 4 through 6 because they skipped some of the ones that they were gonna do.
That whole scene where you had to like work in that factory and drive that damn tractor truck or whatever for like 5 days. I guess there's like a glitch or something in the game, and I found some alternate route that was faster. So I swear to God, like I was playing this game for 5 hours straight driving the goddamn tractor truck. And could not figure out what the hell was going on. And then one day I was like, I'm just gonna try this route over here. And it's just like the veil was just lifted from my eyes, like, oh shit, cutscene. Oh, I gotta fight these dudes. Like, I think I'm the only dumbass at that time that was playing that game that way.
ちょっといいかな。
いらっしゃい。
ワンチャイへ行きたいんだけど、知ってるかな。
なんだ。
There are moments while playing these 2 games that are unlike anything else that you've ever experienced in any other game. So Shenmue 2, which this version of the game is slightly better than the one that came out on Xbox because it retains the original Japanese dialogue. You get to play with subtitles. So you kind of start in Hong Kong, and differently than the original Shenmue, a series of crazy events happens like almost right off the bat. Some kid steals your backpack, you like have to chase after him, and you meet a lady, stay at her place, and it takes a long time, and it's really deep and detailed, and you're always moving forward, very action-packed compared to the first game. The ending of the game is one of the most extravagant endings I've ever seen in a game, where it happens over the course of about an hour. You kind of meet this character who you've never met prior in the game, but who's showed up on all the artwork for all the Shenmues, which is this girl Shenhua. You can like talk to this girl for like a long ass time and learn all this stuff about her that you would have never chose to learn, and then it ends on this kind of weird note where you realize that the sequel to Shenmue 2 could have been an action game, it could have been a totally different experience if they wanted to just like take it in a completely different direction, and story-wise it would have made sense. So the fact that Shenmue 3 is never coming out is a bummer. Still, it remains one of like the craziest games I've ever played, and I really love it, and I played it on Dreamcast. It's where I think it's best experience, and I'm really sad that you can't play it this way very easily, unfortunately. You have to play it with the English dialogue, which is good. Again, such a Dreamcast game. So bright, so happy, so colorful. I think now it's common for games to kind of rip off Smash Brothers. There are a couple like imitators. But then like this game came out and it didn't exactly feel like that. I mean, it's not 2D, it's an isometric view. I wish the series had one more revision and gotten the mechanics slightly cleaned up a bit. I don't know, there's something about the game where you don't quite feel the impact of every hit hitting the other character.
It's just a little messy.
It's a little like messy. Yeah. I wish it got a little bit cleaned up, because I still feel like that game could have been really
There's
special.
a part of it where it's like messy, where it slightly starts to feel kind of like a button masher.
Well, I think it kind of is a button masher when all is said and done.
But then you have like the unique kind of like weapons that you pick up. You know, the sword, the little bubble gum, where you got your characters floating up into the sky.
Well, then that's all separate from actually collecting the power stones and powering up to defeat all the other players.
Right. Those games, they don't need to be balanced. They just need to be wacky, chaotic and fun.
Hello. Welcome to the laboratory of Jean-Paul Gachet.
You had, Leonard Nimoy voicing this
completely bizarre character.
It's really weird narrator that introduces you to this weird fish
with a human head.
That you end up talking to, and it ends up getting this like really snarky personality and having these weird existentialist conversations with you at times.
It's this ugly, sort of bizarre creature. Like almost like they wanted you to mess with it. Like you're not supposed to be like attaching. You're not supposed to worry about hurting its feelings.
It can be weird seeing yourself on video. Were you surprised by the way you looked?
The other major memory I have of the Dreamcast is I knew the guy and sort of worked for him in a volunteer capacity who was the voice of the adult Seaman.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my god.
The voice of the adult Seaman was the head, or still is the head, of an improv comedy group called Comedy Sports in San Jose. I have known him since I was about 12 or 13 years old. He did voice work on the side, and he was the voice of adult Seaman, and it was really, really weird.
Yeah, it must have been. So did you ever like get him to say any of the Seaman phrases?
Absolutely. His name's Jeff Kramer, so we would go in and we'd say, Jeff, you were asking me some very personal questions earlier today. It's like, what? Oh, okay, what? And so sometimes he would indulge us with a little bit of Seaman stuff, but he also did a voice in Space Channel 5, which was the first like rhythm game I played, and now I spend a lot of time playing those, so it was great to have the Dreamcast as my introduction to that.
Yeah, but I was playing the game for about 2 weeks, and on and off, and my roommate turned on my game, was saying some horrible, awful things to my character, my Seaman character, and then when I came home from work one night, turned it on, I found him floating because he turned the heater on and boiled my Seaman to death. Just because he wanted to. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, he killed my Seaman.
Exactly.
It's in the dark though. It's like it hurts my eyes a little bit. It's a bit too bright.
It's a little straining a little.
Oh, too dark, dude. Split the difference.
A little bit in the middle.
Halfway.
Yeah.
That's great.
What's going on?
Okay.
Nice.
It's changing the colors. It's Squarespace. Remember, you can change the colors in real time.
Try green. I like green.
Okay, we'll do
Green's
green.
my favorite color.
That's super cool. Do blue.
Oh,
all right.
We're changing the color. That's
nice.
Dude,
I think orange would be really good.
Orange? Yeah.
Really?
Orange bar logo.
Like how about like an olive or a mauve or something?
Yeah, they move up to like a yellow. hold it. Go back.
seeing
Go back.
Dude,
Go back.
it's like
No, go forward. Go back.
Nice.
Right there.
Yeah,
Go
what
back.
if we can make it
green.
do this?
Oh,
Let's
like
go.
a brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the
like
lights.
that.
Look at the color.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely.
Oh, that's good. Squarespace. Squarespace. Squarespace to change your site in real time. Everybody TV looks kinda shitty to me until we put it on the Squarespace. Real time changing of your website. Squarespace does it in real time. If you want the website to look like a disco, hit this shit up, baby. You will see it in real time. Squarespace.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, that was good talk, guys. Not
Yeah.
too bad.
I kind of like that color.
Oh, right there. Perfect.
Looks pretty good.
I like it.
All right. Let's do it.
But at the time when this came out, I was working at Babbage's. The deal was, if you got it from our store, we would go, get this, get hooked up online, here's my username, meet up with me, I'll help you level up, I'll show you around. So we actually, like, it was part of our customer service, as we would, I had like dozens of customers.
Poured yourself out to
We
customers.
basically did.
That's
It's
awesome.
like,
Was this your idea?
Yeah, well, yeah, because we were like, you know, we wanted to play with more people, and at the time, you know, internet infrastructure isn't what it is now, and so this was my first like real online experience and seeing that potential of what you could do with it.
It was the first game where I became like a loot whore.
Back in, I think it was 2001 or so, Phantasy Star Online came out, and I got made fun of for wanting to try it because my older brother and his friends were all like, "You can't play an online RPG on 56K." And I was like, shut the hell up, I'll do what I want. I want to play this fucking rat game. This is my first online RPG as well, so I learned, you know, how to work as a team, you know, trading. I actually got scammed a few times, got my items stolen a lot. I actually met a lot of friends on there who I still talk to these days, and big fucking stores are awesome.
The only thing about it is a very unwieldy game to play if you wanted to participate in sort of the chat functions of it. You know,
Just had to carry a keyboard on your lap.
yeah, I had to sit with your keyboard on the lap and the controller right there, and you just, you know, I try to do it one-handed. And, you know, I had a lot of friends and couples that I would play with that would have, like, the husband would drive and the wife would type, or vice versa. They would switch.
That's the ultimate way to
That
play.
was so, and it would drive me nuts when I would play with them because they'd be like asking me questions and talking about like, oh, look at that over there, it's so cool, and I'm like trying to type in 3 words without dying.
Yeah, you needed your co-op partner.
I did need a
on the
co-op
keyboard
partner for that, yeah.
Did Choo Choo Rocket ever come to any other system? I mean, did that appear on anything?
Probably
else?
mobile phones or something
Maybe.
like that.
Because
Web
I
browsers.
feel like it went somewhere else, but that's one game that I strictly remember loving on Dreamcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
Choo
very
Choo Rocket
Dreamcast.
was like so wacky. Once again, very lighthearted, very weird, you know, low polygonal art direction, but really cool. You know, like it was
I think
a
they should
really
do
fun puzzle.
Choo Choo Rocket on iPhone or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
That'd
it was like
yeah.
Lemmings meets Sonic 3D meets like some other puzzle game, you know? It was awesome with awesome music and funny cat and nice sound effects. So that's, I mean, another game that just was so Sega, you know? And I really wish that they kept making hardware just for these type of games to have somewhere to keep living.
Okay, so in honor of Dreamcast, I have to make a shameful confession because it just has, you know, has really been hurting me. I bought the sports pack with the 2K sports, baseball, basketball, football, and I took it home, I took the games out, and I sold them to a pawn shop for $5 each. The next day, I returned the sports pack to the store, and the clerk was like, "Don't you want it?" I'm like, "I can't afford it." And then I returned it. 2 days later, I returned to the same store, went to the same clerk, and bought the base Dreamcast unit. And so basically, I bought a Dreamcast for $35 and my soul. So I just wanted to apologize to Sega, and like, because I got so much enjoyment out of that, I just had to unburden myself. I feel so clean now. I'm sorry.
It's like a friend of mine, at the time he was a doctor, well he's still a doctor, and he was obviously had the income to buy like one of these massive kind of plasmas, and when you had it hooked up to your Dreamcast, it was like you knew that the next generation had arrived, you know, and that was before, you know, before I had one, you know. So, and then when you had things like the VGA box as well, you know, that was a new concept, you know, new concept in console gaming. So yeah, it was all good. Probably the most contributing factor to buying a Dreamcast at the time was the fact that it came out cheap. Yeah. So over in the UK, it came out for like £129.99, right? So that's quite a lot in dollars. But then at the time, it was the cheapest of the next generation of consoles, you know, and that was like a great thing. But then nobody bought it, and this was the problem, because in the run-up to when it was being released, everybody was like, we want to get a PlayStation 2, you know, because they're all like, yeah, we're going to wait for PS2 rather than buying Dreamcast. But even like at an attractive price, it kind of got undermined by the fact that like reputation, you know. So like, and it's like what happened with the current generation, with like Sony were expecting people to buy the PS3 and stuff, but they didn't, you know. So kind of like a parallel is that, whereby, you know, pride comes before a fall, you know. Like, and everybody wanted like Dreamcast to be, well, all the fans wanted Dreamcast to be successful, and yet in the end, you know, it was, you know, how the story turned out. You know? Like, it was my dream, like, for Sega to come back to the hardware market, but they probably won't.
Yeah, I know they won't. Yeah, that's the thing, is that, you know, without a home, without the Sega console for these games to be made on, you know, they kind of got scattered. Obviously, the Xbox One got a bunch of the kind of the more hardcore kind of games in the series. You know, we got Jet Set Radio Future there. Gun Valkyrie was made by Sega there exclusively, and then obviously Crazy Taxi 3. Yep. But it just doesn't feel the same. Even those versions of those games felt a little bit kind of like harder edge and you know, Americanized than these wacky games. I mean, the Dreamcast just felt, like I say, there's something about the system, the software, and the games that are on it that just feels kind of lighthearted and happy. A fun place to go and just have a good time with video games.
And then at daycare, though, there was a Dreamcast. And what happened there was nap time, then there was snack time, and then everyone got really anxious for the clock to ding, whatever time it dinged, for them to start Dreamcast, letting us play it. And then we all basically killed each other every day to play Dreamcast. And we would just fight over it constantly, and that's my first memory of really playing games with other people. So
Did you say daycare?
I said daycare.
I am so fucking old.